Hi, everybody, and welcome to Fire and Forte, and welcome to today's guest, Claire Hennah. Hello, Claire.
Hello, Hannah. Lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're always so composed as ever. I know Claire from a time that we worked together, and you were always at the forefront of global sessions with thousands of people watching you. And I did always wonder, sometimes you can get nervous when I've got a Zoom call with 10 people. And I thought, how did you manage it knowing that you had thousands of people watching you?
Well, do you know, I would just say it's good old-fashioned practice, Hannah, to be honest with you. And also I quite like it. And it's also like just having a chat, right? And I think sometimes when you're doing it remotely versus in front of loads of people, there are different energies that you find. And sometimes it can feel quite faceless when you're doing it virtually. And so you can be chatting away to yourself and just thinking, I'm having a great old time. And hopefully the other people are responding to it well enough. But I think sometimes then when you're in the physical environment, you can spark off the energy of having people there, but also it can be really nerve-wracking too. So I think over time, I've also just got used to it. I think we've all got used to the digital environment per se, but I also get a lot of energy being with people. And so I think sometimes if you look at those kind of skills or experiences that you really love, I just love connecting with all of our teams around the world. And I feel really fortunate that I'm in a position that I can do that. So I think it's really important to kind of make sure that you feel lucky in those scenarios. So trying to flip the energy and make it positive, nervous energy, that's what I found works for me.
That's a really great tip, and it does absolutely help that you love what you do. So, to introduce what that is, I mean, I came across you when you were leading digital commerce for the FMCG company Unilever at a time where it had exploded. And then when you had training sessions across, training everyone across the globe, we understood more about your background, which included times is it Selfridges and Virgin. So I wondered if you could talk to us a little bit about what you're doing now and how you've got to where you are today.
Sure. So let me start with now. So I'm very fortunate to work for Unilever, and I've got what we call an integrated role. So I'm responsible for digital commerce across Unilever, but I've also got a new fantastic role to lead all the commercial teams across all channels in our newly formed business group, Beauty and Wellbeing. So I get to bring together passions in life of beauty and wellbeing and have the opportunity to build again. And I really am a builder by nature. So I'm really enjoying being part of this journey because it is going to be a journey. You know, Unilever's not known as a beauty company just yet. And so I've got this opportunity now to kind of build from what's been there before and really transform and be a real challenger in the marketplace. So exciting times. And of course, I've had a digital background, which I'll get onto in a second, but it's that blend of having the passion behind digital and retail, which I've had a background in. So so it marries up really well. And look, it's still a relatively new role. I've just been doing it over a year, so lots to do, lots done, but lots to do. So that's where I am now, and that's my role. But just to give you a bit of a flavor for my background, so I started in an online startup that was called handbag.com, that then became Handbag Publishing Group. And I was there for nearly 6 years. And in that time, the business got bought by a couple of different owners. So first was by the Barclay brothers, so bankers. And then the second company that bought the kind of startup group I worked for was a Hearst. And Hearst are a multimedia company, have origins in the US. But in particular, they own a number of magazines from Cosmopolitan to Runner's World to Harper's Bazaar. So the website that I was working for and the websites I was working for were basically online women's magazines. And I feel really old saying it, but predated Facebook, were all about fashion, beauty. You could also come and talk to other like-minded women on community boards. And I absolutely adored being part of that company. But the last company that bought the kind of startup business, there was about 60 of us in the digital business. It was it was an interesting moment of time where you were this kind of amazing startup business being integrated into this 100-year-old publishing company. And so it came with lots of challenges and lots of opportunity. And after 18 months of doing that integration, I was offered the opportunity to stay and have a slightly different role. But I actually put my hand up for voluntary redundancy, which I was able to get through. And after about 4 months, I left the business, went consulting for a number of fashion and beauty startups. And after about 8 months, I was approached by Virgin Atlantic to go in and lead marketing and content for a new startup that they were launching. So Richard Branson had done the whole shebang about 6 months after I joined. And essentially, it was quite a pioneering idea. What you could do was collate all your travel research and then send it to a travel agent, a Virgin Holidays travel agent, and they could book it for you. But it also started to pull in recommendations for where you've been across the world so you can inspire other travelers. But the business model was quite challenged. So when I went in, we ended up resetting the whole business model and we added in a gamification layer where you could earn miles for your content contributions, which was a really novel idea at the time, but way back when was really was transforming the travel industry, and travel was probably one of the earliest industries to get really heavily disrupted by digital. So it was a hard couple of years, but the best thing to do was integrate that initial business idea back onto the core virginatlantic.com platform and back into the loyalty business. So I spent a couple of years trying to do that, make that startup work, kind of fail, and then integrating back into the business. And then I joined Selfridges and I led the digital marketing and CRM side of the business. And I was there nearly 6 years and I loved it. And I'd always shopped at Selfridges. And for people that don't know Selfridges, it's a luxury department store in the UK. And I remember going to see Santa there as a child. So I just absolutely adored Selfridges. And I think it's just one of these environments which I would call high, low, fast, slow. Where you could go in and buy a £5 lipstick, or you can go in and buy a £5,000 Chanel handbag, and nobody knows what's in the handbag. So it can be accessible or inaccessible, depending on your stature in society, of course. But it wonderfully creative business. I had my little boy there, and then I came back, I ran a transformation program. And then I got approached by Unilever to lead beauty and personal care on their online business. And I had what's best described as a year-long courtship with Unilever, and nearly a year to the day of meeting my then boss, I joined Unilever, and I'm so glad I did because I've learned so much. I'm not the same person who started at Unilever to who I am now. And I've had so many incredible opportunities. And so I'm very thankful for my backstory. It's really shaped me who I am. But I hope I haven't gone on too much, Hannah, but that's hopefully gives you a bit of a flavour of my background.
That is exactly what I was hoping for. And it's a fascinating story, combining quite a few things, such as throwing yourself into a startup environment, a passion for fashion and beauty, and a resilience to actually see through a brief that you've been given. So now you've obviously moved into you've been in a leadership role throughout. Is there some traits of leadership that you've seen consistently through your career, or perhaps that you've nurtured throughout those moments?
Look, I think when I think of leadership, I think about the great managers I've had, but I also think about the managers where perhaps hasn't been quite as anticipated. That's probably the most professional way to say it. And I think we learn by those experiences. And I always go back to how I think I would want to be treated. And I'm pretty human, I would like to think so anyway, and accessible. And I always try to keep it real, right? And so I want my team to feel super empowered to go and do the job that they've been in, been hired to do, right? And they can use me as a sounding board, a piece of advice, an escalation point, but I want them to feel that they can go and do. And they can go and do it well, and I can take blockers out of their way. I can't always take them away instantly, but I'm there to support them. And when I think about the teams that I've been really fortunate enough to stay in touch with, that I call personal friends as well, I just love seeing their journey of where they go to. And if I can have played one small part in their chapter for whatever they decide to do, then that's really important to me. Seeing other people succeed and knowing that you've hopefully helped them along their way is probably what I cherish the most. And so I think the leadership lessons that you learn from all those experiences, you shape into, I would hope, how you want to be treated and how you want to leave the impression and relationship with that, that team. And you don't always get it right, but I think you should be humble enough to acknowledge when you don't get it right, and then humble enough to acknowledge when you do get it right as well, because there's a lot of satisfaction that you can also get from feeling that you've done the right thing.
Absolutely. I can really resonate with that, actually, because you want to improve, don't you? And if people were giving you feedback that were just one angle, which was, you've inspired me lots, you'd think, oh, I don't know if you're telling me the full truth.
Yeah.
So I think your point about being accessible and approachable is really important, because in turn, it's probably what you've valued throughout your journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, you mentioned having your son during your time in Selfridges, which whenever I hear the word transformation, I always think that's full on a transformation role. So I wondered how you found both having your first child during that time, and then as you've kind of gone to your 40s and beyond, how you then balance this big, impressive, fun but stretching job with motherhood.
Look, I think when I came back after maternity leave, my son was actually quite poorly, so I had to delay coming back to work, and it was really hard. It was really hard. I was trying to be superhuman, and people always knew me as working a few extra hours here and there, and my maternity cover hadn't quite worked out so well. And so I'd had a few changes that I needed to make. And yeah, after about 6 weeks, I just thought, I'm not sure I can do this, actually. I'm not sure I could do this transformation role, do what I did before, be a good mom. And I did. I definitely had that moment where I had the tears roll, and but a good wake up call, right? Because sometimes you have to realize is that you can't be everything to everyone, and so yeah. So if anything, I look back in that and I think it needed to happen because I needed to change some things, and but then, going on to your kind of latter part of the question, how do I juggle now? I've got an amazing family set up, from, parents to my husband, who are really supportive. And I think, I'm very fortunate to be in that position. And when I haven't had that support network, it's been an option for me to have paid childcare. And again, I'm in a position where I'm able to do that. Not everybody is able to do that, right? And so I have to feel really fortunate in my position to be able to go out and work and do the job that I do and have the support network, whether that's paid or with family. And not everyone's in that situation. So I should not be moaning about it. I should actually be embracing it and very thankful for it, because I'm in a position to do that. And the thing is that I've always wanted my son to know that women can have a career, and they can go and do good things. And that's important to me, to raise him and to see that. And he's wonderfully supportive as well. And of course, I miss him when I can't always be there, because I do a bit of travel with my job. So it takes a village, though, to be honest with you, Hannah. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I think, again, I just would say I'm very lucky to be in the position I am, and thankful. And not everybody can say that they have that.
It does take a village, doesn't it? And if you haven't got family locally, it's some support network that can deliver that village feeling, isn't it, if it is the friends that you've got nearby. However, it really ties into what you were saying about being human and being real. In your position, you've got this opportunity to support other parents coming back from work.
Yeah.
Have you got any views in how we best do that? Because you've actually lived that experience firsthand, haven't you?
Yeah, and I don't think actually companies do it too well, to be honest with you, Hannah, because I was talking to somebody only last week who's just returned from maternity. And I think it's really important to check in, whether it's dads from paternity or mums coming back from maternity. You know, dads are probably back after a short amount of time and still dealing with sleepless nights, and mums could be coming back after a short period of time. Because I work globally, some women are coming back after 3 months, some people are coming back after a year. But I think the important thing is to check in and ask how you're doing, and it not always asking the question, is your child sleeping? Is probably one of the most annoying questions you can ask somebody. Of course, they're bloody not sleeping. They're only XX months old. Well, I mean, you could be one of these really lucky people. But certainly I was not blessed in that, and still not blessed, actually. On a Sunday morning, my Sunday mummy at 6 a.m. Can we get up? Okay. But I think look, I think in practical terms, checking in, making sure that you've got flexibility in certainly when people start to come back to work as well, because I find is sometimes you can be like thrown in as well, and probably a little bit like the situation that I said of being like, people can just think that you can just pick up everything again, and often you can't quite, right? You've either maybe got different family situations, you need to leave at a certain time. So again, you know, very fortunate to work in a place like Unilever where flexibility is really embedded in the company. Nobody's clock, you know, watching the clock, where are you? It's all about the quality of the work that you do. So I think the flexibility helps, but checking in, making sure you've got the right coming back to work scenario for people, and then continuing. I mean, not everybody has children, so it's quite, you know, it can be hard to expect that everybody knows your situation. But I think just having that conversation with people, how you doing, how the children doing, you managing okay at home, not having that conversation, I think sometimes can be worse. And some people don't want to go there, and that's perfectly fine. But I think you as a manager need to broach those subjects, and you need to create the environment that it's okay that you need to leave early, or that you're going to miss work for a couple of hours to go to a sports day. Because if you don't, I mean, I'm not sure that we're living in or keeping in touch with today's reality of life.
And the skills that people bring back from maternity leave, and the attitude, I suppose, that over time you're more likely to be loyal to a company if they've treated you well during that time.
Totally.
And
Totally.
but I am wondering about this skills piece, because I've also thought about, well, you've had an opportunity to, well, if you've been at work and not had maternity leave, so if you haven't had breaks, you've probably upskilled during that time. You've had that, you know, if you'd been on maternity during COVID, for example, in a business that had e-commerce growth, you wouldn't have experienced what it was like to actually be at the forefront of that. And yet at the same time, on maternity leave, the multitasking that happens, I mean, I don't know, all of the skills that you get must also be relevant. Do you think there is more that we can do to recognize the skills that people might come back from maternity or paternity with, or at least more that we can do to help them upskill if they've missed out on some crucial moments?
Totally. I mean, to be honest with you, Hannah, I ended up doing some work and some consultancy when I was on my maternity. Gosh, I'm not even sure I was even allowed to do that. But anyway, I'm not there anymore. So, oops, get told off. And so what I found at the time was obviously I had a lot more time on my own. So say if I was just spending some more time in my local area, I ended up going into small business owners and, just having a chat. And I like talking to people. And I found that many of them didn't have any digital skills. So once they found out, they were, what did you do? And they were like, oh, could you help us? Could you help us? Could you do this? And so I kept myself very in tune in my kind of 10 months where I could. I mean, gosh, I mean, I wasn't working all the time and I was enjoying being with my little one. So, but it's interesting from the conversations and from that time out that you have with people, the connections that you make, and to what you're saying, the skills that you make, and then let alone when you become a parent, right? You have a plethora of different skills in your toolbox that perhaps you didn't even have before, whether that's patience. Certainly when I was doing homeschooling, I really realized that I'm definitely destined not to be a teacher because I don't have the patience. But equally, I don't know, everything from the amount of love that you feel for somebody, and the warmness that you get and the glow that you get, and knowing how your energy can really impact people. So there's the softer skills, there's harder skills. And I think, yeah, we do. It depends how long people have off, because sometimes people do, have such a short time off as well, right? I think in the arena in digital, you always need to keep your hand in, and you always need to have a thirst for learning. But generally, I find people that work in the digital space are quite curious souls, so they always keep themselves really, whether that's reading. I mean, I tend to read something every day that's quite externally orientated. That's how I start usually my day, because otherwise you just become too insular. So even on maternity, I was the same, right? So we do need to do more, but also I think let's use the opportunity to have a dialogue with people. What is the skills that they think they have learned, right? Because not everybody's going to say instantly what it is. That's why I talked about the softer skills rather than the hard skills always as well.
I think it's a helpful blueprint, Claire, to be honest, to begin by saying, if you have an open heart and when someone's coming back from work, check in with them. And then to actually talk about what skills do you think you've got, or maybe there's a nicer word than skills. It almost loads this expectation on what have you been doing, because your example of being extremely proactive, but obviously there's an innate sense in you to talk to people, and then you've ended up helping and supporting them in their digital skills. Well, actually, you've got a lot of initiative there, and you're an entrepreneur naturally. I've never even thought to ask someone coming back from maternity or paternity if they could have done something similar. Has anything surprised you? Because I imagine lots of people are doing certain things that they weren't imagining with a totally different lifestyle. And then thirdly, I think your piece of advice around reading, when you think about keeping yourself up to date, I often think about doing courses, and you think, well, I wouldn't have time to do that. But actually, if you're reading an article a day, that becomes much more realistic and actually much more up to date as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, I know myself, I haven't got loads of time, but you have to also make your own time. So I mean, gosh, I was love studying, but now now not equally I love working, right? But there's only so many hours in the day, so that's how I try to stay externally orientated. But that's not for everybody. To your point, for some people it's learning courses. I think it's whatever kind of suits you and what your kind of time allows you to do as well.
Yeah, brilliant. It's all about individuality, I suppose, there, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, your role and your career is a little bit of a dream in terms of beauty, fashion, commerce. It's extremely relevant to lots of people, and also very, I mean, the thought of getting magazines and looking at all of these is exactly my background as well. However, the world has moved on a lot, and I'm imagining that you're seeing a lot of innovation in all of those areas. What are you seeing that maybe excites you the most?
Gosh, I think, in the beauty industry, it's so dynamic at the moment. I think whether you look at categories like skincare and seeing the explosion of sunscreen and SPF all over the world, right? Really driven in Asia. But if you look at kind of your individual personalized needs, whether that's acne or you've got a skin condition, I think the innate need to really fix your condition or your need becomes highly and hyper personalized to people. So I think you've got trends like that coming into skincare. Gosh, if you looked at color cosmetics, I've been quite fortunate to do a trip to India, and I spent a lot of time with our beauty advisors. But whether that's popping of color in or it's a particular format, I think we're also seeing a lot of fun in formats, and a lot of new brands coming onto this to the scene. Let's just take someone like Victoria Beckham Beauty. I mean, she's building the kind of clean beauty ethics, but she's also coming up with different ways to be able to apply makeup and color cosmetics. She just launched a contouring range, which is slightly new and different to how other people are doing it. So I think people, when they're kind of, or brands, I should say, not people, but brands, when they're launching, are also looking at new ways to excite the shopper, excite their consumers. And it doesn't have to be dramatically different, but we're seeing that kind of real need and thirst to be able to connect with consumers in a slightly different way, because it's quite a crowded marketplace. So I think there's loads of innovation happening depending whether it's the category. I think in hair, you're seeing skinification coming through. So what you're seeing, kind of your healthy scalp, that's a kind of another key trend. I think if you're shopping in the beauty landscape, you're seeing a proliferation of channels. So how you consume, whether that's TikTok right through to then walking down your local high street. I think the channel fragmentation is really apparent for beauty. I mean, a high online propensity, but I think the need to connect experience, like the kind of digital experience and really amazing omni-channel experiences, are really, really pertinent to beauty. And then I think when I put my digital hat on, I mean, I'm going to be no different to what anyone else is saying. Generative AI is just exploding, and you can't avoid not talking about it, not being immersed in it. And I think what that's doing, let's just take one particular area that's under my remit at the moment, content. I mean, from the amount of people that you employ right through to the opportunity to be able to scale assets in such a cheaper way as well, and a high quality way, I think it's going to be so defining. And I think it's hugely exciting. But you also got to look at the responsibility that you need as a company in that particular space as well. So I think loads happening. I think on the commerce space, there is a restriction of VC in the world. So most retailers that I'm talking to are looking at profitability, sustainable business models. So it is tighter, out there, as we know, in these inflationary times. So with that, you've got to be smarter. You've got to work on how you're going to create a profitable, sustainable business, because there's less money available in the world. So I also think that kind of time where it was grow, grow, grow is slightly residing, and you need to be able to create a business that lasts for people and for societal, needs as well. So hence where that kind of sustainability piece comes in as well.
Fascinating, this link between TikTok brands, but then the reality of the purse strings is something that's going to be an interesting dynamic that's playing out. Who's looking at the inspiration on TikTok, but then what actual brands are people willing to pay for? Or is it like the good old lipstick index, where you think actually makeup is the one thing, if my mortgage has gone up and I'm not going out as much, actually I do want to buy more makeup.
Yeah, good old lipstick effect. And like I think we saw it in COVID, right, as well. There are small life luxuries that you're not willing to sacrifice, and we still see premiumization as such a key trend within beauty, and so I think another hot area is fragrance, right? I think when you look at kind of Gen Z, that identity, or genderless fragrance as well is another area. So I still think the lipstick effect, as you kind of called it, Hannah, it is still very evidently there. You need to look at the pockets within society. Not everybody's got endless cash, of course, but I think people do want small luxuries, particularly at a time when maybe life doesn't feel so good for everybody.
Excellent. Thank you for that insight. Now, Fire and Forte really relates back to the purpose and often the strength that we sometimes find when we get to that point in life. And I wondered if purpose was something that drove you, as well as being in this space that you're in, a career that you're thriving in.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think when I think about purpose, it's such a personal thing to people. You can't always describe it. But when I think about my purpose, I've always thought about being quite spirited, that I'm a catalyst for happiness. And comes a bit from growing up and trying to keep the peace and people happy. I guess that's one dimension of it. And maybe it's rung through ever since. But I really think when you are at your happiest self, you bring your best self. And I think about myself in periods where, I haven't always been happy. Gosh, I'm not going to profess that I'm happy 100% of the time, but I try to always look for the most positive components. And yeah, so I think sometimes your experiences shape you and they help shape your purpose. That's not for everybody, but it's definitely been part of why that's my purpose. But I truly also believe, when I look at high performing teams and high performing individuals, when they're happy, you see the best. You definitely get the best out of them. So sounds simplistic, but yeah, your happy self is your best self.
Well, it's not as simple to achieve, is it? So I think you're right to prioritize that is the most powerful thing to keep exploring, isn't it? Thank you for sharing that. And what's your thoughts on 40s, 50s? I've been talking to lots of women who are sharing their experience of this point in life. And I wondered what your experience or view has been, both of the 40s and how you regard your what's coming up for you next.
Well, I'm pretty lucky, Hannah, right? I just before I hit 40 had a bit of an episode with my health. I wasn't in great health. I lost an awful lot of weight, and was going in and out of hospital. And it made me really reflect on my health more than anything. So I got back onto a good path of health, work out a lot. I'm massively into keeping fit, and my not so new thing anymore, but I love reformer Pilates. And I'd like to even think I'm pretty okay at it, actually. So keeping health and well-being primary has been important, and definitely keeping fit every day as much as I can has been a part and parcel of that. So not trying to take for granted your health, because without that you don't get too far. So that would definitely be one component. I think there are other things when I think about my first year of my 40s, because I'm not far from turning 41 soon, has been I had a big party, of course, to celebrate. But I've done a lot of traveling. I've completed a house renovation. I've been spending quality time with family and friends. I've also started about 2 months ago learning a new skill, a guitar, and I'm rubbish, but I'm trying. Uh, I'm really rubbish. The guitar teacher looks at me, is like, "What the hell? Are you not taking anything in at all?" And I'm reading music, and I'm like, "Oh my god, this is so difficult." So trying desperately, because I love singing. So I really want to be able to do some strumming on the guitar as well. Yeah, of course, work I've talked on. So I think there's those components. You just got to feel really fortunate for being on the earth for being pretty healthy. And with that, I think naturally comes with a enjoyment of life. So yeah, I again probably sound a bit simple, Hannah, but that would be it.
I think they're brilliant words to end on, to be grateful, to make the time to exercise. And the guitar sounds fun. I
Well,
could,
I'm going to be playing a gig anytime soon. I'm going to tell you that.
okay, so we're not going to have a solo album. Unilever, you
No,
don't need to worry. She's not going just yet.
no one needs to worry. I'm not bringing, no, honestly, I'm not doing that to the world. That's for sure.
But I think having fun and trying a new hobby is a really nice takeaway, because if we, even if we're in a job that we enjoy, to have fun and play and laugh at how ridiculous we are probably goes back to being a child and just what made you happy as a child. So I think it is really great to make time for that. So thank you for
Yeah,
sharing all of those. I won't get you to do a
thank
solo
you.
now.
No.
That would be mean. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives on everything from leadership, beauty, commerce to managing a lifestyle. And I'm particularly grateful and inspired by the advice you gave to returning parents, because I think that's a really helpful conversation that we need to all be having. So thank you, Claire. I wish you a
Thank you,
very
Hannah.
good week, and we
Thank
look
you.
forward to seeing what you do next.
Oh, thank you so much, Hannah.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.